Scary telling.
Nobody believed me after I was assaulted. They won't even look at me. Maybe the weird hissing noise developing around my ears has something to do with it. It happened a few weeks ago when I was walking home from work. It was already dark outside, and I was the only person on the street. I heard footsteps behind me, but when I turned around, no one was there. I thought maybe it was just my imagination, but the footsteps continued, getting louder and closer. Suddenly, I was pushed from behind, and I fell to the ground. I tried to get up, but someone was holding me down. I couldn't see the person's face, but I could feel their breath on my neck. I screamed for help, but no one came. Then, the person started hissing in my ear, and I felt a sharp pain on my neck. That's all I remember before I passed out. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. The doctors told me that I had been drugged and sexually assaulted. I was devastated, but I was also angry that nobody had helped me. When I tried to tell the police, they didn't believe me either. They said there was no evidence, and it was my word against nobody's. After that, things started getting strange. I would hear the hissing noise around my ears, and I felt like someone was watching me all the time. I tried to tell my friends and family, but they thought I was just traumatized and needed time to heal. But the hissing noise never went away. One night, I woke up to find a shadowy figure standing at the foot of my bed. It was too dark to see its face, but I could feel its presence. The hissing noise grew louder, and I felt like it was coming from inside my head. I tried to scream, but no sound came out of my mouth. The figure started moving towards me, and I could feel its cold breath on my face. Then, it whispered in my ear, "I'm not done with you yet." After that night, I started seeing the figure more often. It would appear in the shadows, watching me with its soulless eyes. The hissing noise grew louder each time, and I felt like I was losing my mind. I tried to ignore it and carry on with my life, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. I stopped going out and isolated myself from everyone. The only thing that kept me company was the hissing noise. One night, while I was lying in bed, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I turned around to see the figure standing next to me. This time, I could see its face, and it was like nothing I had ever seen before. Its eyes were empty sockets, and its skin was gray and rotting. The hissing noise was unbearable now, and I felt like my head was going to explode. I tried to scream, but the figure put its hand on my mouth, silencing me. It leaned in close to my ear and whispered, "I am the reason nobody believes you. And I am not done with you yet." I passed out from the pain, and when I woke up, I was in a different room. The figure was nowhere to be seen, but I could still hear the hissing noise. I looked around and saw that I was in a dark, damp cellar. The walls were covered in mold, and there was a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. I tried to get up, but my hands were tied behind my back, and my feet were bound together. Panic set in as I realized that I had no idea how I got here or who had put me here. I heard footsteps approaching, and I braced myself for the worst. The figure appeared in front of me, and I could see that it was holding a knife. Its voice was cold and menacing as it said, "You have been chosen. You will be the vessel for my rebirth." I tried to scream for help, but the hissing noise drowned out all other sounds. The figure came closer, and I felt the knife against my skin. Then, everything went black. When I woke up, I was back in my own bed. I was confused and disoriented, but the hissing noise was gone. It was replaced by a strange sense of calmness, and I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I tried to remember what had happened, but it was all a blur. I couldn't remember how I got back home or what the figure had wanted from me. I thought maybe it was all a nightmare, but the bruises on my wrists told a different story. I tried to go back to my normal routine, but something had changed in me. I no longer felt afraid or anxious all the time. It was like the figure had taken away all my negative emotions and left me with a sense of peace. But the peace didn't last for long. A few days later, I started hearing the hissing noise again. This time, it was different. It was softer and more comforting, like a lullaby. I couldn't resist its pull, and I followed it to the basement. The basement was different now. It was no longer dark and damp, but bright and welcoming. The walls were painted in soft colors, and there were toys and books scattered around. It was like a child's playroom. In the middle of the room, there was a crib, and inside it, there was a baby. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Its eyes were bright blue, and its hair was golden like the sun. It smiled at me, and I felt my heart swell with love. The hissing noise grew louder, and I realized that it was coming from the baby. It was like the baby was speaking to me through the noise, telling me that it was mine, that it was meant to be mine. I picked up the baby and held it close to my chest. It felt like coming home, like I had been searching for this baby all my life. I knew then that I had to protect it, that I had to keep it safe from the world. As I held the baby, the figure appeared in front of me. It was no longer scary or menacing, but peaceful and loving. It smiled at me and said, "You have passed the test. You are worthy of being my vessel. Take care of my child, and I will always be with you." And with those words, the figure disappeared, leaving me with the baby and the hissing noise. But this time, the noise was no longer scary. It was like a lullaby, a reminder that I was never alone. From that day on, I took care of the baby like it was my own. I named it Alice, and I loved it more than anything in the world. The hissing noise never went away, but I didn't mind. It was a reminder of the love that had saved me. I had been eyeing these new Bluetooth headphones for weeks, so when I finally got my hands on them, I couldn't wait to try them out. I eagerly put them on and powered them up for the first time, waiting for the familiar sound of the Bluetooth connection. But what happened next wasn't what I expected. Instead of connecting to my phone as it was supposed to, the headphones connected to what looked like a wireless speaker. I was confused at first, wondering how this could have happened. But then I heard it. A voice, low and menacing, coming from the headphones. It spoke a language I didn't recognize, but the tone was unmistakable. It was angry. I quickly took off the headphones, trying to shake off the strange feeling that had come over me. Maybe it was just a glitch, I told myself. Maybe I had accidentally connected to someone else's device. But deep down, I knew that something wasn't right. That night, as I lay in bed trying to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like something was breathing down my neck. And then I heard the voice again. It was faint, barely audible, but I could hear it. It was coming from the headphones. I sat up in bed and reached for the headphones, my heart racing. I put them on and listened carefully, trying to make out what the voice was saying. At first, it was just a jumbled mess of sounds, but then I started to pick out words. They were in that same foreign language as before, but this time, the tone was different. It was pleading. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was this some kind of prank? A joke? But if it was a sick one. I took off the headphones and tossed them onto the nightstand, but the feeling of being watched persisted. It was like someone was in the room with me, even though I knew I was alone. As the days went on, things only got worse. The voice in the headphones grew louder, more desperate. I started to have nightmares, vivid and terrifying. I would wake up in a cold sweat, feeling like something was trying to pull me into the darkness. And then, one day, I noticed something strange. The voice in the headphones wasn't just speaking in that foreign language anymore. It was starting to speak in English. It was asking for help. I didn't know what to do. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself that it was just a glitch, but the voice kept getting louder, more insistent. I started to become obsessed with it, listening to the headphones for hours on end, trying to decipher what the voice was saying. And then, one day, I finally understood. The voice was coming from somewhere deep within the headphones themselves. It wasn't a prank or a joke. It was something else entirely. Something evil. I tried to throw away the headphones, but every time I did, they would reappear on my nightstand the next day. It was like they were following me, haunting me. I started to do some research online, trying to find out if anyone else had experienced anything like this. That's when I stumbled upon a forum post from someone who had a similar experience with a pair of Bluetooth headphones. According to the post, the headphones were cursed. They were created by a group of cultists who used dark magic to imbue them with the power to possess whoever wore them. The post went on to say that the only way to break the curse was to destroy the headphones completely, but that wouldn't be easy. The cultists had made sure that the headphones were nearly indestructible. I didn't know what to do. I was terrified, alone, and trapped by these cursed headphones. But then, I remembered something. There was a man who lived down the street from me who was known for his expertise in the supernatural. He was rumored to be a warlock, or a shaman, or some other kind of powerful magic user. Desperate, I made my way to his house and knocked on his door. When he answered, I pleaded with him to help me. At first, he was skeptical, but when I showed him the headphones, he knew exactly what they were. Together, we came up with a plan. He would perform a ritual to weaken the curse, and then I would try to destroy the headphones with a sledgehammer. It wasn't easy. The ritual was intense, and I could feel the curse trying to hold on to me even as the warlock worked to break it. But then, I felt a surge of power, and I knew it was time. With all my strength, I swung the sledgehammer down onto the headphones. There was a loud crack, and the headphones split in two, falling to the ground in pieces. And then, everything was quiet. The voice was gone, and the feeling of being watched lifted. It was like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. But even now, I can't shake the feeling that something is still out there, waiting for me. I don't know if the curse is truly gone, or if it will come back to haunt me again. All I know is that I will never forget the terror of those cursed Bluetooth headphones and the evil that they held within them. As I wake up from my sleep, I call for my dog and smile as I hear the tiny familiar pitter-patter of his tiny feet. I frown, however, when I hear multiple others join it and I hear my dog whimper beside me. I sat up in bed, my heart racing as I realized that there was more than one set of footsteps in the room. The pitter-patter of my dog's paws was unmistakable, but the others were heavier, like the footsteps of a person. I strained my ears to listen, and I could hear the sound of breathing, soft and rhythmic. I was paralyzed with fear, not knowing what to do or who to call for help. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped, and there was an eerie silence that descended upon the room. I waited for a few moments, my breaths coming in short gasps as I listened for any movement. Then, I heard a soft scratching sound, like something was trying to claw its way through the wooden floorboards. I looked down, and my eyes widened in horror as I saw the wooden planks begin to crack and splinter, as if something was trying to claw its way out from beneath the floor. I scrambled out of bed, grabbing my phone and quickly dialing 911. As I waited for the operator to answer, I heard a low growl and then a loud thud as something slammed against the door. I froze, my eyes locked on the door as I heard another growl. Then, the doorknob began to turn, slowly at first, then faster and faster until it was spinning wildly. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding in my chest as I watched in horror as the door began to open, revealing a dark, shadowy figure standing on the other side. I tried to move, but I couldn't. My body was paralyzed with fear. I watched in horror as the shadowy figures came closer and closer to me. Their movements were jerky and unnatural, as if they were not human. I could feel their breath on my face, cold and foul-smelling. Suddenly, one of the figures reached out and touched my forehead. A jolt of electricity shot through my body, and I screamed in pain. The figures laughed in unison, a high-pitched, shrill sound that echoed through the room. I felt like I was going to lose my mind. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the figures vanished into thin air. I was alone in the darkness once again, but I was not alone. I could feel a presence in the room with me, something malevolent and dangerous. I managed to move my body again, and I stumbled to my feet. I stumbled towards the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel eyes on me, watching my every move. I could hear whispers, as if the shadows were taunting me. Finally, I reached the door and flung it open. I stumbled out into the hallway and collapsed, gasping for air. I looked back into the room, but it was empty. The shadows were gone, but the feeling of malevolence lingered. I never went back into that room again. I never spoke of what had happened to anyone, fearing they would think I was insane. But the memory of that night stayed with me, haunting me for years to come. Years passed, and I had almost convinced myself that it had all been a nightmare. But then, one day, I received a letter in the mail. It was from a man named Henry Jacobs, a former employee of the hotel where I had stayed all those years ago. He wrote that he had stumbled across my story online and felt compelled to reach out to me. He said that he had worked at the hotel for years and had heard countless stories of strange occurrences in that room. He even claimed to have witnessed some of them himself. According to Henry, the hotel had been built on the site of an old mental institution that had burned down in the early 1900s. Legend had it that the spirits of the former patients still haunted the grounds, seeking revenge for the mistreatment they had endured. Henry claimed that the hotel management had always known about the hauntings but had kept it a secret to avoid scaring away guests. He said that he had finally decided to come forward with the truth, no matter what the consequences. Reading Henry's letter brought back all the memories of that terrifying night. But it also gave me some closure, knowing that I hadn't imagined it all. The truth was even stranger than I had imagined. I never returned to that hotel, or any other rumored to be haunted. I learned my lesson the hard way: some secrets are better left buried.